Why is it that for the last 4 centuries the Imitation of Christ has stood higher than any other book of devotion in the heart and judgment of millions of Christians? Because, beyond any other devotional work, it seriously takes the moral teaching of our Lord in the Gospels as a rule of thought, feeling, and action. It is the fashion of our day to make much of the words of Jesus Christ when his divine person, or the atoning value of his death, or the teaching of his inspired apostles is being disparaged. But those who would thus exalt the words of Christ at the expense of other things which are assuredly dear to him, do not know or do not remember the lessons which his words really teach, of what is the standard of thought, motive, and conduct which they set before us, or how exacting and peremptory they are. The author of the Imitation did keep this constantly in mind. He had before his eyes those searching and awful warnings, those piercing questionings of motive and character, those high ideals of devotion, the counsels no less than the precepts of Christian perfection, which are too often never read, or at any rate are seldom pondered in days of smooth open ways, good store, a creed for every clime and age, by Mammon's touch new moulded o'er and o'er, no cross, no war to wage. And therefore it is that in reading a Kempis, the Christian conscience feels itself in the moral atmosphere of the Gospels. There are here no such accommodations of the words of Christ to moral situations which they cannot be made to sanction without more or less violence, as are to be met with in modern books of devotion. And we pass from his pages to those of the inspired evangelists with less sense of a change of spiritual atmosphere than is possible in the case of any other writer. Among English books of piety, Law's Serious Call and Bishop Wilson's Sacra Privata most nearly recall the tenderness and the severity of a Kempis. But they scarcely less recall a Kempis by what they are not than by what they are. The present translator has wisely taken advantage of the admirable Latin version of the Imitation, which was published by C. Hirscher at Berlin in 1874. To all previous editions, Hirscher's is related as a Hebrew or English edition of the Psalter, which exhibits the parallelisms, is to an edition which prints the Psalms as though they were prose. The difference is not only or chiefly one of literary form. The mind is led by the poetical arrangement to dwell with a new intelligence and intensity upon clauses and words, and to discern with new eyes their deeper meanings, their relation to each other, and to the whole of which they are parts. That the Imitation of Christ, now for the first time offered to English readers in its original form, will be widely welcomed, the present writer cannot doubt. H. P. Liddon, Christchurch, March 1889. There is perhaps no name better known in the world of books than that of Thomas Kempis. Yet it would puzzle most people to tell whether he lived in the 13th or 15th century, whether he was a monk or layman, whether he passed a quiet or a stormy life, and what he did besides writing the book which has made his name so famous. The world of readers cares little for biography that has no scandal in it, and men pass by simple lives to read about St. Augustine's immorality, Milton's domestic troubles, and Abelard's tragedy of love. But God carries his work on, though his workmen may be forgotten, and the pen which won an immortality by copying the church music still works miracles, turning bitter waters into sweetness every day. Let us think ourselves back into the end of the 14th century and the beginning of the 15th, and with the map of Europe open before the eye of the mind, look in upon the stormy scene. Here are the French and English flying at one another's throats, fighting the senseless 100 Years' War. In Central Europe, Bohemia is in wild revolt to avenge the death of Huss and Jerome of Prague. The Western Church is torn by schism. One pope is at Rome, another at Ravenna, another in France, and each one is denouncing his brothers as Antichrist. While in the East, Constantinople is only waiting for the dreadful day when the long-watching crescent shall become a circle round the walls, and Mohammed shall vanquish Christ in Eastern Europe, as he has already vanquished him in Africa and in Arabia. There is a wave of discontent everywhere rearing its crest. The clergy are ill in their lives, the laity are careless. Chaucer, the poet of the well-to-do, may pen his kindly prologue and smile upon the vagaries of friars and monks and sompnours. But there are deeper tones to be heard from the rectory at Lutterworth, where the morning star of the Reformation is ending his dauntless life over his translation of the Bible. And from the ploughman's rugged text stand out in startling distinctness word pictures of an England just remembering that it has forgotten God. But there was quiet here and there, and in Thomas Kempis' country of Holland, the noise of the world was partly dulled. What could it matter to the Hemmerlein family at Kempen what the popes were and did? It was enough for them to mend the shoes of Kempen, to look after the tiny scholars, and perhaps to hear Tauler the mystic preach. It must have been a serious home, for Thomas's elder brother John had gone away when quite a boy to get himself an education among the brothers of the common life at Deventer, a community half lay, half clerical, founded by Gerhard Groot, and so far as we know, his father and mother never saw the lad again. The writer of the church music was as yet a toddling child, and when the toddling child grew older, what must he do but follow in John's steps? So in 1393, Thomas presents himself in Deventer, asking for his brother John. Here at Deventer he learns Latin, perhaps Greek, a little mathematics, and a smattering of what they called philosophy, logic, and science. But he learns something more, the copying of manuscripts, in which he soon excels. The Bible and its thoughts, reverence for people in authority, simple rules for a life of hard work, purity, and holiness. These, under due guidance, he also studies. For the world was not so far advanced in that century that schoolmasters and parents could afford to let a child pick up these subjects by the light of nature. Then we see him, as we should expect, ready to enter the monastery of the Brotherhood. And off he went to Mount St. Agnes near Zwolle, but not till 1414, was he ordained a priest. He was in no hurry to take a step which he regarded as an important one. His quiet life was spent in the service of the busy monastery. He taught the young, copied manuscripts, dreamed wonderful dreams, and wrote book after book. What are the words under his picture? In omnibus requiem que sivi, sed non in veni, nisi in höchens enderböchens. I have sought everywhere for peace, but I have found it not save in a little nook and in a little book. From this retreat, except for 1 year of persecution, he never went, and it was in his cell that the Imitation was copied and written out. He died at last in 1471, at the age of 97, having fulfilled in very deed and verifying in himself what he recommended in his discourses should be done. To understand the teaching of this last of the mystics, we must read the lives of Tauler and Wösbrook, but it is quite possible in a few lines to show what is the leading thought of the Musica Ecclesiastica. Mysticism exists in every century and in every church, and, stated in a word, means this: works in themselves are nothing, personal communion with God is everything. Eckhart, Suso, and Tauler taught that the first step towards perfection is a purification of the soul from sin, and when this is done, there follows a complete identification of the soul with God. It is quite a mistake to think that the continual repetition of this thought in the church music is merely due to the wild transports of the monastic cell. The man who wrote that the soul might even on earth become one with God meant it and believed it. Man is God in potentiality, and may by communion with God regain his first happy state. Works are useless, ceremonies of little avail, charity but cold, if this communion with God be wanting. Thus it is that the writer of church music says little about the ethics of Christianity. He is the St. John of devotional literature, and he feels himself as close to Jesus as if he had once walked with him in the cornfields, stood beside the ignominious cross, and leaned upon his breast. It is precisely this omission of his which brings down upon the book the curious condemnation of Dean Milman, and which wins for it the panegyric of George Eliot. It is a record of hidden spiritual struggle, and insofar as it deals with the soul and God alone, it is separated from all creeds. Resting on them, it is above them. Now it is well known to students that the church music, commonly called the Imitation of Christ, though this title is a complete misnomer, was written not in simple prose, but in a rhythm more or less exact. Dr. Hirscher of Hamburg, who has spent many years upon a study of the text, has once more brought this fact before the world. I say once more because even in Kempis's lifetime, people knew that the book was called Musica Ecclesiastica, and that it was written metrice, or in rhythm. But succeeding centuries disregarded the melody of the Latin and the evident intention of the writer that the chapters should be learnt by heart and chanted or recited. Very often the lines rhyme, but this appears to be more the result of the Latin inflections than of any fixed intention. At any rate, this rhyming can hardly be reproduced in English. It has been my aim to take full advantage of this rhythmical arrangement, and to give to the public a copy of the church music, which shall, as far as my English can catch the melody of the semi-barbarous Latin, correspond with the original, but I do not pretend that the translation is mercilessly literal. Long words, stereotyped phrases, and theological terms, which carry no fixed meaning to the reader, have been discarded in favour of simple English. But I have generally made it clear in a footnote whenever I lay violent hands upon a time-honoured expression. The order of the books has been altered. They are given as Thomas Kempis left them. Nobody would think of putting the book on the communion last if he considered for a moment the mystic teaching. The Warnings Useful to a Spiritual Life, Book 1, the Warnings to Draw Us to the Inward Life, Book 2, and A Pious Encouragement to the Holy Communion, Book 3, lead up to the dramatic conversations between God and the faithful soul, the Book of Inward Consolation, Book 4. And lastly, no passage has been smoothed over, toned down, or omitted merely to suit the particular tenets of any school in the Christian Church. Of the 1441 Codex, which is the basis of Dr. Hirsch's edition, and of this translation, Donne Mori says, Purum igitur Teutonici et Nederlandici codices nobis antiquiores esse vidiantur, omnes demum supereminet codex illi, qui in Burgundica Bruxellensi bibliotheca nunc reperitur, nobis ex omnibus indiciis constari viditur in Antwerpiensi codice certissimum integerimumque existeri textum. And he adds that if you arrange the lines as they are marked in this codex, you will be astonished at the melody, rhythm, and rhyme, as if the writer had meant it to be sung in plain song. And he compares the form of the book with that of the Psalms and Proverbs. I may ask any of my readers who doubts this to refer to Hirsch's Prolegomena zu einer neuen Ausgabe der Imitatio Christi. If the work is in any way rescued from the misunderstandings of many generations, my aim will have been accomplished. The thinking world has for ages given its imprimatur to the volume, which began its worldwide journey from the cell in Mount St. Agnes. From that hillside still rings out the mystic's voice. I will hear what the Lord may say in me. Blessed is the soul that hears its Lord's voice speaking within it, and takes the word of comfort from his lips. Blessed are the ears that catch the throbbing whisper of the Lord, and turn not to the buzzings of the passing world, that listen not to voices from without, but to the truth that teaches from within. Blessed are the eyes that, shut to outer things, are busied with the inner life. Blessed are they who penetrate within, and more by daily use, strive to prepare themselves to take the heavenly mysteries. And blessed are they who try to give their time to God, and shake them free from all the burden of the world. So all is vanity, saving, loving God, serving Him alone. Chapter 1 of Imitating Christ and Scorning all the World's Vanities. He that followeth after me walks not in the darkness, thus saith the Lord. These are Christ's words, and by them we are told how far to imitate his life and ways. If we would be truly filled with light, and from all blindness of our hearts be set at liberty, therefore our study above all must be upon the life of Jesus Christ to ponder. His teaching passes all the teaching of the saints, and he who has the Spirit of Christ would find the manna hidden there. But it is thus that many a man hearing the gospel ever and again, feels for it little longing, because the Spirit of Christ is none of his. Yet he who would, in all their fullness, taste and know the words of Christ, must study to make all his life like in its beauty unto his. What boots it deeply of the Holy Three to talk, if, lacking humbleness, you grieve that Holy Three? Deep words make no man just and holy, but lives of virtue make men dear to God. Far rather had I feel a sorrow for my sin than know the definition of the feeling. For if in the mere letter you should know the Bible through, and all the sayings of the wise, what, without love of God, without his gracious touch, would all be worth to you? Vanity of vanities, and all is vanity, save loving God and serving him alone. That is the best philosophy, to scorn the world and strive to gain the kingdom in the skies. Therefore it is but vanity to seek the riches that will fail, and to build hopes on them. It is but vanity to look for offices of state. It is but vanity to raise oneself on high. It is but vanity to follow longings of the flesh, panting for what must bring us heavy punishment in days to be. It is but vanity to wish for life that shall be long, and care but little for its being good. It is but vanity to think alone upon the life we lead, and not look forward to the things which are to come. It is but vanity to love what with all speed is passing by, and not to hasten there where joys eternal dwell. Bethink you often of the saying, the eye is never satisfied with what it glances at, the ear is never filled with what it hears. And try to wean your heart from loving what you see, and turn to what you cannot see. For they who follow where the senses lead will spoil the conscience and lose the kindly touch of God. Chapter 2. Humble Thoughts of Self. All men by nature dearly love to know, but knowledge without fear of God, what is it worth? Better indeed a humble peasant fearing God, than the proud thinker who neglects himself in musing on the courses of the stars. He that well knows himself is cheap in his own sight, and praise from man delights him not. For if I knew all that is in the world, and yet were not in charity with men, what would it profit me before my God? He is to judge me from my actions here. Rest from this excessive longing. In it you will but find distraction and deceit. Gladly the men of knowledge would seem wise, gladly be talked of as the learned. But there are many things of little or no profit to the soul. Unwise indeed is he who turns his mind to aught but that which serves the safety of his soul. Much talk contents it not, but a good life will cool the burning of the mind, and a pure conscience bring us with confidence before our God. The more you know, the better that you know it, the sterner will the judgment be, unless your life be holy. Then be not raised on high in pride for any skill or knowledge of your own, but rather fear for what has been entrusted to you. If you think you know much and comprehend things well, reflect that there is much you do not know. Be not high-minded, but confess your ignorance. What would you put yourself before another? Many may be found more skilled than you, many more learned in the law. But if you would learn something that will profit you, love to be all unknown and to be held as nothing. The deepest lesson for a man to learn is this, and the most gainful too, truly to know, aye, and to scorn himself. Great wisdom is it, and it makes a man far better, to put no price upon himself, and to think highly of his neighbour with a kindly mind. For if you saw another sin some open sin, or do some grievous deed, think not the better of yourself for that. How long can you stand straight? You cannot tell. We all are frail. But this must be your thought. None is more frail than I. Chapter 3. Truth's Teaching. Happy the man taught by truth itself, not by the shapes and sounds that pass across his life, but by the very truth. Our thoughts and senses often lead us wrong. They see one side alone. What is the use of great dispute on what is hidden and obscure? We shall not in judgment day be judged because we knew them not. But it is great unwisdom that we should neglect the gainful and the needful things, and turn our willing thoughts to what is strange and hurtful. Eyes we have and do not see, what should we care about scholastic terms? The man to whom the word eternal speaks is loosened from the bonds of many theories. For from one word come all things, and all things speak one word. This word is the beginning. It also speaks to us. Without this word, no one can judge or think aright, but he to whom all things are one, and he to one brings all his questions, and in one sees all his answers. Steadfast-hearted will he be, and rest at peace in God. O God of truth, make me one with thee in eternal love. Oft am I weary, reading, listening, but all I wish and long for is in thee. Then silent be all teachers, hushed be all creation at the sight of thee. Speak thou to me alone. The more a man is one within himself and simple in his inner life, the deeper and the more he understands, yet without toil. For down from heaven there comes to him the light that brings intelligence. A spirit simple, pure and firm is never wasted in a multitude of busyness, because its business is in all to honour God. It strives to be at rest within itself from all self-seeking thoughts. Who troubles you? Who hinders you? Naught but your heart's affection, yet unkilled. The good and pious soul first maps out in his heart his business in the world, nor does his work ere draw him off into the longing of a wicked mind. He bends it all to listen to his reason, the holy witness of his life, who fights a braver fight than he who strives to win a battle o'er himself. This should be our ceaseless work, to crush the enemy within ourselves, daily to get a braver hold on him, and win some ground upon the better path. All our ideal life upon the earth has something unideal that clings to it, and no deep thoughts of ours are free from some dark mists. The humble knowledge of yourself will be a surer road to God than a deep yearning, searching into knowledge of the world. Yet knowledge is not to be blamed, nor any simple grasping of a thing. Nay, in itself considered it is good, and is of God ordained. But a good conscience and a virtuous life are ever put before it. Still, because many rather strive to know and not to live in holiness, they often err, and bring forth little fruit, if any at all. Or if they used the care they spend upon their questions in rooting out their vices and in sowing seeds of virtue, there would not be such scandals and such evils in the world, such careless ways within the cloister walls. But when the day of judgment comes, we shall be asked what we have done, and not what we have read. How holy were our lives, and not how fine our words. Tell me, where now may all those lords and masters be whom you knew well, while on the earth they lived, and while they flourished in their learning? Their prebends others hold. I cannot tell if they think once of them. In life it seemed that they were something great, and now none speaks of them. How fast the glory of the world flits by. I would their lives had balanced with their knowledge, then good had been their studies and their books. How many perish by vain learning in the world, that care too little for the service of their God. They vanish into shadows while they meditate, because they make their choice for greatness, not for lowliness of mind. Truly great is he who has great charity. Truly great is he who in himself is small, and holds as naught all heights of honour. Truly wise is he who deems all earthly things as dung, that he may win the prize of Christ. Truly learned too is he who does God's will, letting his own will go.